All right, welcome to your very own deep dive. Today, we're heading back in time, way back to medieval Europe.
Medieval Europe.
Knights, alchemists, whispers of the devil himself.
Yeah.
You shared some really cool excerpts from blackmagic.pdf with me, and
Yeah.
I gotta say, this is not your average history book.
Oh, absolutely not. It's incredible the way it just kind of weaves together these historical accounts
Right?
with all these elements of the supernatural.
Yeah.
It really makes you wonder where history ends and legend begins,
Totally. And the story itself is just full of ambition, forbidden love, betrayal.
Oh, yeah.
Just all the good stuff that makes for a truly gripping read. And the characters are anything but ordinary.
Right.
We've got Dirk Renswyd, this incredibly talented artist.
Yeah.
But he's got this unsettling fascination with the occult,
Yeah.
And then there's Balthazar of Courtrai, a knight driven by a thirst for power that you wouldn't believe.
Unbelievable.
And kind of caught in the middle of all their schemes is Jacobia of Martzburg,
Yeah.
a woman struggling to reconcile her faith with some pretty dangerous desires.
Yeah, she's in a tough spot.
Yeah.
And we can't forget about their Veery,
Oh, right. Very.
that student who gets swept up in this world of magic and ambition. His journey is really something. He goes through a lot of change, faces some really tough moral choices.
Absolutely. I think Derry's journey is going to be wild.
Oh, yeah.
Speaking of wild,
Yeah.
can we talk about Dirk's workshop for a second?
Please.
The book describes this scene where he's working on this unfinished statue of the devil.
Oh, wow.
And he's slowly gilding it. Like the sun is just beating down outside. There's all these strange objects everywhere.
Yeah.
The whole atmosphere just feels charged with this kind of
Yeah.
dark energy, you
Like,
know?
I see it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting how the author really sets up this contrast, right?
Uh-huh.
Between this beauty of the natural world and this kind of unsettling nature of Dirk's art.
Mm-hmm.
Outside you've got these golden daisies growing in this neglected fountain,
Yeah.
kind of mirroring the gold leaf that he's using on this devil statue inside. It's like, is there beauty in darkness?
Oh, I see what you mean.
Can something be alluring and dangerous at the same time?
Absolutely. There's definitely a tension there. And then that tension kind of ratchets up even more when Balthazar and Barry show up.
Oh, yeah.
All swagger, all ambition.
Those two.
The book describes them as sharing this fascination with the occult
Right.
and this longing for something more than just like ordinary life.
Of course. Of course. But I think it's interesting how their motivations are so different, right?
Okay. Yeah, tell me about that.
Balthazar, he's clearly driven by this desire for power and status.
Right.
Those classic knightly ambitions. But Derry, he seems a little more drawn to knowledge, to understanding the mysteries of the universe. He wants to know how it all works,
Yeah.
Even if those forces driving everything are a little dark.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Like they represent these two different sides of the
Right.
same coin.
Exactly.
But even with their differences, they both end up making
Yeah.
some morally questionable choices.
Oh, for sure.
Remember the scene where they encounter that saint on the road and just decide to rob him?
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a huge turning point.
Huge.
They justify their actions by saying, oh, we need this gold.
Yeah.
We need this gold to achieve our great goals.
Right.
But it really reveals this willingness to compromise their principles to get what they want.
Exactly.
A classic example, right,
Totally.
of how ambition can lead even, well-intentioned people
Yeah.
down a very slippery slope.
I mean, I get that, but part of me wonders if they even believe their own justifications.
Right.
Like, are they intentionally lying to themselves, or are they so blinded by their ambition that they don't even see the wrong they're doing?
That's a really good question. And it gets to the heart of human nature, doesn't it? Maybe it's a little bit of both.
Yeah.
Maybe they convince themselves that the ends justify the means, but at the same time, they're ignoring this little voice inside.
Right.
It's a very human thing, isn't it? To justify our actions
Yeah.
when they serve our own interests.
Totally. It makes you wonder how far they're willing to go.
Oh, yeah.
And while all this is happening, we have Jacobia of Martzburg, trying to find her way in this world,
Right.
full of these ambitious men. She has that terrifying encounter with the witch in the forest.
Oh, right.
But then she's rescued by Sebastian, her steward. But you get this feeling
Yeah.
that there's this unspoken tension between them.
Yeah, definitely.
Like their relationship is more than just master and servant,
It's more complicated, yeah. And what's interesting about Jacobia is her vulnerability. She's surrounded by all these powerful people with their own agendas, and she often feels like she's just a pawn in their game. But at the same time, she has this quiet strength. She has this really deep faith that helps her get through all these challenges.
I agree, but her faith is tested, too.
Oh, yeah.
Especially when she meets Dirk. Remember how I mentioned his discomfort, we'll call it, with women?
Right.
Well, it turns out he develops this serious obsession with Jacobia. He even goes as far as using his magic to try and manipulate events and keep her away from Mary.
It's like his art.
Yeah.
His art is almost a conduit for his power.
Right.
Yeah. And his obsession with Jacobia, it's almost fueling his abilities.
Oh, wow.
But it's a dangerous game he's playing.
Yeah.
It feels like he's losing control.
Mm.
Like those darker impulses, are starting to consume him.
It's like he's trapped. And speaking of traps, let's not forget about Empress Isabeau. This woman is a force. She manipulates Balthazar to further her own schemes. I mean, she even poisons her own husband, Emperor Melchior,
Wow.
to secure her own position,
It's a classic example of how power can really corrupt.
Totally, yeah.
She starts with this idea of just trying to secure her position.
Right.
But it quickly becomes this ruthless quest for dominance. She's like a textbook example of that idea,
Yeah.
The ends justify the means, no matter how ruthless those means might be.
And it's interesting how she uses Balthazar, right?
Oh, yeah.
She plays on his ambition, his desire to be recognized,
Right.
to get him to do what she wants.
It makes you wonder, is he aware of what she's doing?
Yeah.
Or is he so blinded by his own desires
Totally.
that he doesn't even see how she's using him?
Right. Exactly.
Probably a little bit of both, honestly.
Yeah.
He might recognize it on some level,
Yeah.
but he's willing to overlook it because he benefits from the situation.
Yeah.
Right?
He gets to feel powerful. He gets to feel important. And for someone like Balthazar, that's a potent drug.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They're playing a dangerous game, and it feels like things are about to spiral out of control.
Oh, yeah.
But just when you think you've got a handle on everything,
Mm-hmm.
Who shows up?
Ooh.
Michael II, this seemingly holy cardinal with a pretty dark past.
He's a fascinating character, right?
Yeah.
Michael II, he's complex, he's kind of enigmatic.
Yeah.
Presents himself as this very pious, devout man.
Right.
But his actions tell a different story.
Totally.
Don't they?
Yeah.
There's something darker there.
Yeah.
Something more ambitious. And the fact that he has this connection to Dirk and Very,
Right.
it makes you think there's a shared history there.
Yeah.
Maybe a mutual pursuit of some kind of forbidden knowledge,
Okay, so we've got this whole web of intrigue.
Yeah.
All these characters kind of vying for power, for control.
Exactly.
But what's the point?
Why should we care about these medieval power struggles?
Well, because they're not just about medieval times, are they?
What do you mean?
I think they reflect these timeless truths
Okay.
about human nature.
Yeah.
These characters, with their ambition, their love, their betrayals,
Yeah.
they're like these archetypes that we still see today.
Right.
Right. The struggle for power,
Yeah.
the desire for wealth and influence,
Yeah.
the moral compromises that we make to get ahead. These are all themes that just echo through history, through different cultures.
So what you're saying is these medieval characters, despite their swords and their sorcery, they're really just reflections of us.
Exactly.
That's amazing.
They remind us that the human heart, with all of its capacity for good and evil, hasn't really changed,
Yeah.
It's the same.
Yeah.
Regardless of the historical context.
Wow. That's pretty powerful.
Yeah.
It makes me want to just dive even deeper into this story
For sure.
and see how it all unfolds.
Yeah.
And speaking of unfolding, I feel like we're just scratching the surface here.
Yeah.
What do you say we take a closer look at some of the more unsettling events?
Okay. Yeah.
Like Jacobia's encounter with the witch and the whole growing tension between her and Sebastian.
Absolutely. Those events are key to understanding what's really going on here. The interplay of faith, fear, desire, and they give us some clues about the nature of the magic itself.
Okay, cool. Well, before we jump into all that, let's take a quick break. When we get back, we'll unpack all of that, and then we'll explore how those events connect to the bigger picture.
Sounds good. So let's go back to that unsettling encounter
Yeah.
with Jacoby and the witch in the forest.
Right.
What really struck me about this whole scene is how it kind of plays with our expectations, right?
Okay, yeah.
Like on the surface, you've got this classic fairy tale trope, the innocent maiden lost in the woods, threatened by this malevolent force.
Yeah, I see that, but there's a deeper layer there, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't think the witch is just some, stock villain.
Mm.
She represents something more,
Yeah.
like the fears, the anxieties of women in this society. She
Mhm.
lives on the fringes, she's marginalized,
Right.
and the knowledge that she has is dangerous.
Right.
It's considered heretical. And it's interesting how Jacobi, as pious as she is still drawn to the witch.
Yeah.
She's terrified, but she's also fascinated.
Totally. It's like she recognizes something in her.
Yeah, maybe a kindred spirit.
Yeah.
Someone who's also navigating, the constraints of this patriarchal society.
Right.
They both have a certain power. Jacobia through her faith, the witch through her magic. But those powers, they're often seen as a threat by the men around them.
Yeah, that's a good point. And speaking of men who feel threatened,
Yeah.
let's talk about Sebastian for a second.
Oh, Sebastian. He's something else.
He rescues Jacobia from the witch.
Right.
But you can tell there's more going on there.
Oh, yeah, way more.
Under the surface.
Sebastian, he's devoted to Jacobia, without a doubt.
Yeah.
But his love, it's got this possessiveness to it,
Mm-hmm.
and a deep insecurity. I mean, he's trapped in this loveless marriage to Sibylla.
Right.
And he sees Jacobia as his only shot at real happiness.
But it makes him, reckless. Like when he tells Jacobia about Sibylla's fate,
Oh, right.
thinking it'll win her over, but it just backfires.
Completely.
Yeah.
That's a big turning point for him. He realizes he's lost her.
Yeah.
And that his actions have pushed her closer to Very. His love for her, which was once his strength, it becomes this destructive force. It's tragic.
It is. It's a reminder that good intentions can go wrong when they're driven by, jealousy and despair. And, speaking of Very, it's interesting how his journey kind of mirrors Sebastian's in some ways.
Oh, how so?
They both start out with these noble aspirations,
Right.
but they get corrupted by their desires. Sebastian with his love for Jacobia and Very with this thirst for knowledge and power.
And they both make choices that lead to their ruin.
Yeah.
They're so focused on their goals
Right.
that they lose sight of what really matters.
Mm-hmm.
Compassion, integrity, the well-being of the people around them.
It's like Dirk's obsession with Jacobia.
Mm.
All three men, Dirk, Sebastian, they're Morieri, they're all blinded by desire for something they can't fully have.
It's like they're all caught in this web of their own making.
Yeah.
Their desires, they might have started out noble,
Right.
but they become twisted, almost perverse.
Yeah.
It leads them down a path of darkness.
Yeah, exactly. And speaking of darkness, I think it's time we shift gears a bit.
Okay.
Talk about the political intrigue. Remember Empress Isabeau and her ambition?
Oh, yeah. How could we forget?
Last we saw her, she was manipulating Balthazar, even poisoned her own husband to secure her position.
She's a fascinating character, Isabeau.
Yeah.
She represents a different kind of darkness,
Oh, yeah. What do you mean?
It's not like the passionate darkness of Dirk or the tortured longing of Sebastian.
Right.
It's cold. It's calculating. It's driven by this relentless pursuit of power.
And she's so effective.
She is. She understands how power works. She knows how to play the game.
Totally. It's like watching a master chess player outmaneuvering their opponent.
Exactly. And she's not afraid to make sacrifices, even if it means betrayal or violence. Poisoning her own husband. That shows how ruthless she is. She believes she's above the rules.
It's like she sees herself as a goddess, destined to rule, but her ambition leads to her downfall.
Right. And that's a key theme throughout the story. Unchecked ambition. It can destroy you.
It's like that old saying, pride comes before the fall. And we see it with Michael II, too. He becomes pope,
Yeah.
but his reign is marked by paranoia, cruelty, and ultimately his own demise.
He becomes the very thing he was fighting against.
Right.
Despite his outward piety, he's consumed by this darkness.
Yeah.
He succumbs to the temptations of power, becomes a tyrant, and in the end, he's left alone, vulnerable, just a shell of his former self.
It's a reminder that the pursuit of power can be a double-edged sword.
Absolutely. It can bring rewards, but it can also corrupt you, destroy you. What did you think about the plague that ravages Rome?
Oh, yeah. The plague. It feels like it's more than just a historical detail, you know? Almost like a symbol of the moral decay that's infecting everyone.
I agree. It's like a physical manifestation of the spiritual sickness spreading through the city. Corruption can infect individuals, but it can also infect entire societies.
Yeah.
It also shows how fragile human life is. Even the most ambitious, the most powerful, they're still vulnerable to forces outside their control.
That is a sobering thought. Speaking of sobering, let's talk about that final confrontation
Yeah,
between Jacobi and Theory in the middle of all the chaos and despair of the plague.
it's such a powerful scene. It brings together so many of the story's main themes.
Yeah,
You see Jacobia completely changed by her experiences, confronting Derry. He's emperor now, but he's disillusioned.
totally. And then there's Ursula, the dancing girl, who turns out to be Balthazar's wife.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Thought to be dead, her appearance just adds this whole layer of, I don't know, supernatural intrigue.
For sure. And it reminds us that the past always comes back to haunt you.
Yeah, it always does.
Ursula's presence also highlights how interconnected all their lives are.
Right.
Their choices, their actions, they have these ripple effects that extend far beyond themselves. They're all forced to face the consequences, even if those consequences are painful.
It's like that butterfly effect thing.
Exactly. One small change can have huge unforeseen consequences.
Before we get too philosophical, there's one character I want to touch on.
Yeah.
Balthazar. He disappears for a while, but
Right.
then he comes back, and it's dramatic.
His return is something else.
It is. It's a reminder that even those who seem defeated can rise again, sometimes with a vengeance.
He's not the same Balthazar, though.
No, he's different. He's not that swaggering knight anymore.
Not at all. He's something darker now, fueled by revenge.
It's like he's become the very thing that destroyed him in the first place.
It's like he's made a deal with the devil. And his return sets in motion a chain of events that ultimately brings down Michael II.
It leads to his own demise.
Yeah, Balthazar's story is a cautionary tale
It is.
about what happens when you seek power no matter the cost. He gets his revenge, but it costs him his humanity.
It's powerful, and it leaves me with so many questions.
Oh, yeah, me too.
Like, what about Dirk? Where did he go? And what about the Pope's final letter? What did he learn in his pursuit of power?
Those are great questions.
Right?
And I think they're meant to stay with us. The story doesn't wrap everything up in a neat little bow. It leaves us with these mysteries. Maybe there are answers hidden within the text waiting to be found. Or maybe the author wants us to draw our own conclusions.
It's like we're supposed to continue the deep dive on our own.
Exactly. And that's what makes this story so engaging. It's not just a historical account or a supernatural thriller.
Right.
It's a reflection on what it means to be human, the choices we make, the consequences we face. It's a story that sticks with you.
I agree. It makes you examine your own life, your own desires.
Totally. Before we get too carried away, let's remember some of the good stuff, too.
Yeah.
Like Sebastian's loyalty to Jacobia,
Right.
her unwavering faith,
Right.
and even their Carrie. He has his moments of self-reflection.
Absolutely. Even in all the darkness, there are these little glimmers of hope, redemption.
It reminds us that even when things are tough, we can choose a different path.
So what does this all mean for the listener as they navigate their own life?
I think it reminds us that we all have a choice. We can give in to the temptation of power,
Yeah.
let our ambition consume us,
Right.
or we can choose a different path, one guided by compassion, integrity.
It's a powerful message, and it definitely resonates today.
It does. But before we wrap up, I want to go back to one thing,
Okay.
the post letter. He writes about having, known things in their fullness. What do you think he meant by that?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It implies that Michael II discovered some secrets along the way. Maybe about magic, the forces at play in the universe, or even the true cost of his ambition.
And the fact that he only shares these secrets at the very end, it makes you think, what was she trying to say? Was he confessing? Warning future generations.
Like the author's giving us a puzzle to solve.
And maybe by solving that puzzle, we'll learn something about ourselves.
I like that. For me, it's the choices, right?
Choices.
Yeah, the power of choice. Like every character, from Dirk in his workshop to Jacobia finding comfort in her faith, they all have to make these decisions that really shape their lives,
Yeah.
and the lives of those around them.
Yeah, you're right. It's like the author saying, hey, look in the mirror. What choices have you made that got you to where you are today?
Yeah, yeah.
And what choices are you going to make tomorrow that'll shape your future?
Exactly. What about all the supernatural stuff?
Oh, the magic.
Yeah, the magic, it's like woven into the whole story. Do you think we're supposed to take that literally, or is it more symbolic,
That's a good question. I think that's part of what makes it so interesting.
Yeah.
You're never quite sure where the history stops and the magic starts.
Right.
I mean, you could see it as literal power.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's more about the character's deepest desires and fears,
Sure.
or even, those forces that we can't control that just shape our lives.
Yeah, like fate,
Yeah,
destiny.
exactly. Like Maybe the magic represents all that unseen stuff, the twists and turns that life throws at us.
I like that. It reminds me of that line from the Pope's letter, remember?
Which one?
Known things in their fullness. Do you think he meant, like, his ambition gave him access to some deeper understanding? Or did it just kind of, mess with his view of reality?
Maybe both.
Both. Yeah.
That's the thing about knowledge, especially the dangerous kinds, right? It can be enlightening,
Yeah.
but it can also corrupt you.
Absolutely. It's like a little knowledge is a dangerous thing. But in this story, it's more than just knowledge that's dangerous.
What else?
It's ambition, desire, the willingness to, break your own rules to get what you want.
That's why it's so relevant, even now, hundreds of years later.
Yeah.
Because human nature, it hasn't really changed. We all face those temptations, those tough choices. And then we have to live with the consequences.
And it feels like there's no right answer.
Yeah.
No easy path. Everyone's journey is just, I don't know, messy.
That's what makes it real.
Yeah.
The story doesn't give you a simple moral.
Yeah.
It asks you to think about it.
Yeah.
To really explore human nature and all the gray areas.
So we're supposed to put ourselves in their shoes, feel what they're feeling, understand why they do what they do.
Exactly. And maybe, just maybe, we'll learn something about ourselves along the way.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what are your final thoughts? What stands out to you the most about blackmagic.pdf?
I think it's the whole idea of power. Political power, magical power, even personal power.
Yeah.
It can be a good thing, but it can also corrupt you.
Totally.
The key is to use it wisely,
Yeah.
with compassion, with integrity, thinking about the consequences of your actions.
I like that. Wise words. Maybe that's the real magic, right? Choosing your own path, shaping your own destiny, using your power to make the world a little bit better.
I like that a lot. I think we've reached the end of our journey.
Yeah, this has been great. Thanks for joining us on this exploration of blackmagic.pdf. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep seeking the magic within yourselves and the world around you.